Good evening. When you see a picture like this, how do you feel? Safe or unsafe? Well, if it's the latter, a shocking new report out today explains why. Britain's biggest police force, the Metropolitan Police, has lost the trust of the public. It is racist, it is sexist, and it's homophobic. These are the damning conclusions of a year-long review sparked by the death of this young woman, Sarah Everard. She was kidnapped, raped and murdered by a serving police officer 2 years ago. A serving police officer. It's worth repeating. And go back 30 years and Stephen Lawrence was murdered in a racist attack in south-east London. The failure of the police then to catch his killers led to the force being branded institutionally racist. Well, today we learned that not much has changed, 3 decades on. We're doing a lot on this report tonight because although it's about the Met, the findings affect every police force in the country, wherever you're watching. Julian Drucker has our first report, and it begins with some of the most shocking personal testimonies of those who spoke to the author of the review.
Young female officers were traded like cattle and moved on to different units depending on which male officers found them attractive.
Baptised Sikh officers like me were picked on. One officer had his beard cut because an officer thought it was funny. Another officer had his turban put in a shoebox because they thought it was funny.
Back when I was on the response team, when you heard an LGBT matter come out on the radio, you'd hear a collective groan. People don't want to attend those calls.
Britain's biggest police force is institutionally racist, sexist, homophobic and broken. Baroness Louise Casey comes to those conclusions after more than 300 pages. But some knew that already. Alice Vinton says she experienced sexism throughout her 11 years in the Met.
I've had it said to me by a DC in the specialist rape unit that most rape complaints are a load of rubbish. For a long time I would say that, oh no, the Met's not racist, the Met's not sexist. I would defend it to the hilt. And it's only now really that I've had so many years away from it that I can look back and really see things clearly and just how toxic the culture was.
The damning review was prompted by the horrific death of Sarah Everard at the hands of a serving officer. Baroness Casey warns there could be another murderer like Wayne Couzens or another serial rapist like David Carrick hiding in plain sight. The Met has vowed to change.
It's ghastly, isn't it? You sit down and read that report and it generates a whole series of emotions. It generates sort of anger, frustration, embarrassment. I've been really clear in my 6 months of commissioner about probably more outspoken than anybody else in the sort of last few decades of policing about the need for reform. And my resolve and our collective resolve will only get stronger.
The Met was, of course, described as institutionally racist before, in the fallout from Stephen Lawrence's racially motivated killing 30 years ago. Today, as his mother, Baroness Louise, said the Met was rotten to the core, the Home Secretary said change could take a vast amount of time.
The report underlines the fact that the Met faces a long road to recovery. Improvements must be made as swiftly as possible, but some of the huge challenges for the organisation may take years to fully address.
Most of all, Baroness Casey says women and children have been failed by the Met. Aisha Hussein's cousin Jan had been missing for nearly a year when officers found her remains inside a freezer at a convicted sex offender's East London flat. The body of a second woman, Henriette Such, was also discovered.
They don't know how to look after vulnerable women anyway. They haven't got a clue what they're doing. Both these girls were vulnerable, and when they were both Jan was reported missing, she wasn't taken seriously, and that is because she was vulnerable. They've never said sorry. They've never admitted that they were wrong.
The biggest warning for the Met, it should be broken up if it cannot affect a complete overhaul, says Baroness Casey. It is, she says, an organisation that has fundamentally lost its way.
And Julian joins us now. So, Julian, this is an incredibly damning report in so many ways, but one of the strongest criticisms, if you like, is that the issues that the Metropolitan Police face right now are institutional, yet the current commissioner, the current boss, denies that.
Yes, so Mark Rowley accepts that there is racism, misogyny, homophobia, but he says he won't use the same language as Baroness Casey. He says the term institutional, as we heard there, is ambiguous. He says he thinks it has different interpretations. I think he thinks there's a worry that it means everyone is like that in the force. Sadly, we weren't given an opportunity to ask him that in an interview, so it's not completely clear what he means. But I know you've asked Baroness Casey that, Dan, what the Commissioner thinks, and we're going to hear that later in the programme. So serious, though, as you say, and that report has page after page of shocking detail. One Met officer, for example, just to finish, is quoted. He says, "If you look at our performance around rape, serious sexual offences, the detection rate is so low, you may as well say that it's legal in London." Extremely dire stuff today.